Good evening, and welcome to another adventure in Power Talk. We're so glad to have you tonight with us in the studio, and we have as a very special guest Mark Anderson, who is an Assistant State Attorney General for the Washington State. Mark, welcome to Power Talk.
Thank you, Bill. It's good to be here.
This is an adventurous time.
It is.
It's an adventurous time in every manner that we can possibly address. Mark, in our conversation prior to the program start, you grew up in the church.
Yes.
You grew up in the church. What was it like?
Well, I'm very grateful that I have a Christian heritage. My mother and father were both Christians a long time before I was born. Mm-hmm. And so I was dedicated to the Lord when I was a little child, and
grew up on the pew.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yep. Grew up sleeping underneath the pew sometimes on Sunday night services.
Yeah.
And pretty much have followed the Lord since. There's been times that I've sown my wild oats, but I've always known the right way to go anyways.
You went through the normal growing up stages and phases. Did you have trouble when you entered high school?
Not really too much. I think that the real significant time frame in my life, of course, was when I was out of high school. Now I'm making decisions on my own. Okay. Went to college. And was responsible to make decisions about my own life and recognized, hey, it's true. There really are consequences for what we do.
Did you find it difficult for your Christian walk while you were in college? Because I know there's a lot of temptations there and a lot of... You went to college in...
University of Washington.
Now, is that where you also went for your law?
No, my undergraduate degree is in business administration from the University of Washington, which of course is in Seattle. And my law degree is from Seattle University. But at the time that I entered law school, it was the University of Puget Sound.
UPS.
And it became Seattle University while I was in law school. So that was an interesting experience as well.
Now, you had a lot of studies, a lot of hard studies, but now, I had two brothers who went to UPS, so I know there was party time there. Was that a temptation?
Well, at that point in my life, I was a little more mature. I actually didn't go to law school until I was in my 30s. So there was a 10, 12-year period between graduating from college and entering law school.
Okay.
And we didn't talk about this previously, but actually what I did during that point in time was I was actually just working at Costco on a part-time basis and studying theology.
Oh, really?
And yes, and I have a master's degree in theology. Most of the classes that I took were from Fuller Seminary, which is in Pasadena, California.
Okay.
But they have extension courses at Seattle Pacific University.
Now, was your father a minister?
No, he was a stock clerk at Northwest Airlines.
Okay.
So I'm a blue-collar guy.
Okay, you're a blue-collar preacher. Now, do you have any members of your family that are in the ministry?
No, none of us are actually formally in the ministry, but...
You have the credentials, but you elected to go another direction?
Well, it was real interesting because I think that all Christians in some senses are called into the ministry. We're called to make a difference in our world. And I was studying theology, and it was really strange. I had this desire, this inclination to study law. And I really thought to myself, something's wrong with this. And I had led a Bible study for a period of time, and a friend of mine who had actually gone to that Bible study had moved to Los Angeles, California. So I went and visited him, watched the Huskies play in one of the Rose Bowl games down there, and he wanted me to meet his pastor, so we all went out for breakfast together. And we had really a life-changing conversation that morning where he told me that, you know, it's really not so much, Mark, the position that you hold in life that the Lord cares about. It's not even so much what you do that American society and Western society probably in general, we emphasize too much what it is that you do. And he featured to me that what the Lord really cares about is not what you do, but who you be. And at that point in time, there were so many different things that were going on in the church that were really unfortunate, to be frank. He actually said, you know, you might make more of an impact as a lawyer than you would as a minister anyways. And so the most important thing that you should do is do what's in your heart. And the Bible teaches that a good man out of the good treasure of his heart is going to bring forth good things. But on the other hand, you know, so if you're a good man, you're going to bring forth good. But if you're an evil man, you're going to bring forth evil. So it's not about what you do, it's what you be. And if you be who God has called you to be, the good will come out of your life.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
you know, I thought when I was meeting this guy that it was just going to be a breakfast conversation. And Bill, by the time I left, I was really in tears because I didn't know that that time was going to happen. And I know that I haven't articulated what happened that morning with the grace that was conveyed to me, but I just really recognized that day. You know, the Lord loves us. He cares about us. He has a plan for our lives. And that plan is not about primarily what we do.
It's what
We're called to know Him and to be like Him. And then wherever we go, we're going to produce fruit that's consistent with what he wants to accomplish.
Now, between the time of college and entering law school, you had a gap in there.
Right.
What did you do then? I mean, you had to be working someplace.
Right. I was working at Costco. And Costco is a great company. It was growing like crazy. I was praying, Lord, bless this company.
Yeah.
They're providing my income. Costco had just started, actually. I was in one of Costco's first warehouses and just doing blue-collar type work and generating enough revenue to put a little food on the table and
Were you married?
pay rent. No, I was a
wasn't married?
single guy and I was just studying.
Living at home?
No, I was out on my own.
Out on your own?
Yeah.
Paying your own way.
Absolutely.
Did you have any adversity living your faith? It's easy for a pastoral student or a minister to walk his faith, live his faith, because he's ensconced in the church.
Right.
But your call, you had all the call, but you were blue collar. And so, did you have any, was it ever tough? Did anybody ever come against you?
Oh, I'm sure that happens on a regular basis. You know, I just kind of feel like my personality, I actually enjoy challenges and sometimes, you know, and maybe this is a little different than you're asking me about, Bill, but I feel like when we allow our lives to get in a rut, we're really comfortable. Everybody else is just like us. There's no need really to stand up.
Right.
And so when you're in an environment where your differences are really apparent, it is more challenging, it's more difficult, but you also have a recognition that the differences really are visible to those around you, and that's a good thing.
Now, when you were going to school, even though while you were working and getting your law degree, and then where from there? After you received, now you are an attorney.
Right.
Well, you have to go to the bar, and after you pass the bar, then now you're an attorney. Yeah. What then? What happened then?
Well, it was interesting because one of the areas that I was interested in was civil rights litigation, actually. I think that one of the things that is wonderful about America is the individual liberties that we have protected by the Constitution of the United States of America. And so from the time that I went to law school, I was really interested in studying that area of law and focusing on that area of law. And it struck me as I thought about civil rights litigation and just pursuing the interests of my heart as I was doing, following up on that conversation that I had with that pastor. I took the law school admissions test and submitted my application to a number of different law schools around the country and was fortunate enough to be admitted to Seattle University Law School. So I'm now in law school, but I'm not really sure exactly where I'm going, but I know I'm really interested in doing litigation because I thought that that would suit my personality. We can talk about why if you want, but the area of law that I thought I wanted to pursue was civil rights litigation. And I recognize as I'm thinking about this and taking classes in law school that the real area where American society is so stratified and diversified on, for example, even Sunday morning, we're kind of talking about the relationship between church and theology and just life, Bill, that it's really, in a sense, sad to me that we have black churches and we have white churches and we have Asian churches and all these kinds of things. But the real place where our society is integrated is in the workplace. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody is going to be discriminated against on the basis of their religious beliefs or a disability or their race or whatever else, it's probably really going to be in the workplace. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the area of law that I decided I really wanted to pursue was employment law. And what was really interesting was right out of law school, my first position was with the Washington State House of Representatives. I worked for the legislature for a very short period of time. I had an opportunity to be in private practice for about a year, just doing contract work for different law firms until I actually found a permanent position where I was doing what I really wanted to do, which was employment law. And it was very interesting that my first position was with the Teamsters. So my father had been a stock clerk with Northwest Airlines, and unfortunately Northwest is notorious for bad labor relations. There were a number of times when I was a kid when I had been out walking the strike line with my father. So I grew up in a union home, a blue-collar guy. And so I began the practice of law, related to employment law at least, working for the union. And then, interestingly, a lot of my cases were against the state of Washington government.
Against?
Against the state. We were representing workers for the Washington State Department of Corrections, Institutions Bargaining Unit. And through a long series of events, which are another interesting story, I ended up switching sides. I started to work for the state, representing management in employment-related cases.
Now, as a blue collar kid, blue collar all your life. Now that has to affect your personality. You said
Absolutely.
Your personality is with the worker.
Absolutely.
I mean, isn't it? You favor the worker, but you have to represent.
Well, I represent management right now, but I'm a litigator. Okay, and so one of the great protections that we have in American society, the two greatest civil rights that we have, civic rights, is number one, the right to vote, and number two, the right of a jury trial. And people who are accused of crimes or people who are accused of committing civil violations have a right to a jury trial. And I kind of pride myself on the fact that I'm a blue-collar guy. And most of the people who are sitting in that jury box are people just like you and me, Bill. You know? And so I don't have the benefit of a Harvard education. I'm not an Ivy League guy. But my sincere belief and my hope is that when I'm talking to the people in the jury, that they know that I'm one of them and that I talk their language.
And you hear their language.
And I hear their language. And so hopefully, as I'm articulating a case and arguing a case and I'm calling witnesses, you know, integrity is everything. And so if people believe that what I'm saying is the truth, that's powerful. That's persuasive.
Now,
That's what win cases.
Something that has always been in my mind. Of course, everybody watches TV and they watch, you know, cop shows. Law and Order is one of my favorites. And I always wonder, how does an attorney, when you have to represent this side, but your heart is with this side. What does an attorney do? What do you do?
Well,
You call upon your faith for that?
yes, and ask the Lord for wisdom.
Uh-huh.
And I think the tension that you're talking about would be particularly obvious in the context of criminal law
Yeah, yeah.
for a defense attorney who's asked to represent a murderer or a rapist or something like
But
that.
what about you know, a labor law? A labor law, you know. An employer says no, no raise, no nothing, we're not doing any of this. But you look at the employment side, the blue collar guy, and you know, all he wants to do is make a living. And you're stuck in the middle. And you have to bring the two sides together. Is that what you do?
Sometimes.
Sometimes? Yeah.
Sometimes my job is just to litigate. Sometimes there's a fight, and one side's going to win and one side's going to lose.
Now, you know, now, Mark, there's maybe a whole lot of people out there that's viewing this that they have heard this word, litigate, many times, but they don't know what a litigator is or what he does.
Okay.
Well, explain to us
Sure.
what you do as a litigator.
Well, I defend the state of Washington, the people of the state of Washington, government, the Washington state government, specifically management. Any employer conducting business in the state of Washington, or as far as that goes across the United States, is subject to both federal and state laws, a multitude of federal and state laws regulating conduct in the workplace, including laws prohibiting race discrimination, sexual harassment, disability discrimination. If an individual has a disability, they're entitled to accommodation so that they can perform the essential functions of their job. And where I get involved is if an employee of the state of Washington, Washington state government is one of the largest employers in the state of Washington, and so they have to comply with the same laws that all the other employers have to comply with. And if an employee of the state of Washington alleges that they have been discriminated against, my job is to defend state of Washington government.
I
So
see.
essentially I'm representing management and hopefully saving the taxpayers some money.